Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Market Huddle with Joe Lucey here. I'm Joe Lucey. So let me ask, before I jump into today's presentation here, think about how much has changed over the last 20, 30, maybe 40 years. Wow, some of the changes have been quite dramatic. That would probably be somewhat of an understatement. Yet, when it comes to planning for our retirement, a lot of us are still relying on a lot of the conventional wisdom or conventional thoughts from probably sometimes decades ago. And while somewhat outdated, something we might want to be rethinking with our retirement planning and making sure that we're bringing that into what we're doing so that we can make sure that our retirement plan is even more successful than it otherwise would be. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the video here, and we'll focus on the PowerPoint here. We'll probably try to keep this to about 15, 20 minutes. Of course, if you have questions, feel free to text them in the chat box. Hopefully Jay gets unlocked here, but hopefully everybody can see me. If everybody can see me, if somebody just wants to text that I'm live and it's working, that would be great. So, but with that said, we'll continue to go forward here. So I do this, turn that off. So, and again, this week's Market Huddle. It's about the 5 pieces of conventional planning that we want to make sure that they are being rethought. They probably don't stand a chance with everything going on right now. I mean, let's face it. We have record low interest rates. We have more volatility coming into the stock market. In fact, if I start looking out here over the next, between now and the end of the year, we got back to school, probably getting back into the fall. I would be surprised to see more around the COVID and outbreaks with that, whether it's locally here in the Twin Cities or in the Minnesota, Wisconsin, or other areas. We have probably the most contentious presidential election that we've seen in a very long time. And on top of that, we have, more and more stimulus coming along here that is going to more than likely change taxes and the taxes we pay in our retirement. So we want to start thinking about what are some of those strategies we want to incorporate in our retirement planning. And that's what we do here at Secure Retirement Financial. Keep in mind that a lot of what we talk about is not about necessarily what is the best investment strategy, but how do we bring these investment strategies that we bring with our clients? How do I bring that together with an overall retirement plan? One that includes how to take our money back, make it last a lifetime. How do I do so in the most tax efficient way? And then addressing those other risks that are out there, things like healthcare, long-term care, and maybe the legacy we may want to leave someday. So let's start here. Well, first of all, let's start with the disclaimer that the attorneys make us say. Understand that I am not an accountant. I don't do tax returns, but we do a lot of tax planning in our office. And I've got an area that I'll talk a little bit about that. I also am not an attorney, so if we end up talking about any kind of legal type things, keep in mind that we are not attorneys here in the office, but we work with a lot of the good attorneys that you've worked with and continue to do so because of our comprehensive planning process. Keep in mind that at the end of the presentation, if anything we talk about here today is something you think that we should be reviewing, let's do that. Let's review. We can set aside anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes with anybody that's on today's call, whether you're an existing client, maybe you're referred to the Market Huddle this week by an existing client of ours. You were forwarded an email and decided to join. Feel free to take advantage of that 15 to 30 minute visit. And even if you maybe had been in the office or visited with us once or twice, the last 6 months or even several years ago, feel free to take advantage of that. We want to be here and make sure that we have answers for you on how to make sure that your retirement is even more successful. So I'm going to cover here 5 conventional wisdoms around retirement planning that I think we need to rethink. And the first one is about this notion that taxes are going to be lower in retirement. If you've ever listened to us on Secure Retirement Radio, I say this quite a bit. I think that we have been lied to as a general rule for anybody that's a baby boomer here. We were told years ago we would put aside this money into this retirement account. That retirement account was likely sponsored by your employer, or maybe it was an IRA. Remember when you could only put aside $2,000 into an IRA? But we were told that we'd put this money in, we'd get a tax deduction when we did so. And then years later, when we needed the money back for retirement, we would be able to get this money back at a reduced tax rate. One of the most surprising things that a lot of families find when we start to go through our planning process with them, what we call a complementary review, is that tax rates for many of you are actually going to be higher in retirement than what they were when you were setting aside this money. In fact, Forbes magazine tells us that we are dealing with even greater uncertainty than usual, which is driving the uncertainty than the usual, driven by questions like how long will COVID-19 be? What will the economic impact be of COVID? How is the stock market going to perform? Will my kids ever go back to school? Another worry is that you might have on your radar are things like increases taxes that occur early in the year. A better article might be one from CNBC. It talks about, this was actually just here a few weeks back, said that the wealthy are preparing for tax increases because the government spending is soaring at both state and local levels. Revenues are dropping like a rock because of people, tax rates are down. So this will only really mean one thing for us. And as according to CNBC, it's going to be monumental tax increases around the corner. And they're actually projecting that we're going to see these tax increases within the next 5 years. Now, if you visited with anybody in the office here over the last several years, you know that we've talked about how tax rates as we are currently seeing them are planning that they're set to expire when they pass the tax laws that we're currently under. 2018 was the first year, 2019 the second year. These tax rates are set to expire right now on January 1st of 2026, meaning January 21st of 2026, we're going to go back to the old tax rates we were in here just a few months ago, unless Congress does something to change that. Now, I'm probably singing to the choir. Most of us already know that Congress is very hesitant to make changes until they're absolutely forced to. And in fact, the way that they seem to be playing there in Washington, D.C., I think it's very likely that we're going to come to a point here that these best case scenarios, the rates just expire. The problem is this. We've raised $2 trillion in stimulus here with the CARES Act. We did another $1 trillion or so when it comes to quantitative easing. The president just did another executive order extending that $400. You know, it used to be $600 a week. It's now $400 a week for unemployment. All of this, while probably well needed to stimulate the economy, all of this is going to have to come back to us some way with higher taxes. If you've been listening to us for a long time, you know that I've always said that tax rates are very likely to go higher. In fact, most of you that have been in the office would agree with me. I can't think of a time in the last 25 years that anybody told me they actually thought tax rates were going to be lower going forward. But now there's even more certainty. We went from a situation where at the beginning of the year, we were sitting at about $22 trillion in debt. Now we're bouncing on $27 trillion. It's been an enormous amount of debt that's been added to the books, and all of this is going to have to come back to us. So understand that number one lie that we've been told as boomers, tax rates will be lower in retirement, that is unlikely going to be the case for most of you that are joining us here today. You might be saying, well, then, Joe, what do I do? It really comes down to putting together a look-forward tax planning strategy. Let's sit down. Let's make sure that we look at all the different tax-advantaged options that are out there. We may proactively want to actually pay a little bit more tax here in 2020, 2021 before tax rates go up. to move money from these tax disadvantaged accounts, your IRA, 401k, 403b, the money that's never been taxed, but all of it has to come out and be taxed. Let's move that, put together a strategy using the existing tax bracket. Sometimes I see that somebody says that they were hesitant to do any of this kind of planning I talk about moving money from tax disadvantaged accounts to tax advantaged, like Roth IRAs or the life insurance retirement plan, because they're under the understanding that it all has to be done in 1 year. That's far from the case. What we want to do is we want to look at your current situation, look at the tax codes. We start looking at where you're going to be, not just today in 2020, but where you might be in 2021, 2022. One of the biggest culprits we see where people get into a situation where they get painted into a corner and have to pay higher taxes are usually around these retirement accounts and the required minimum distributions and such. So let's start to put together a tax plan. That's something you can take advantage of. If you want to schedule some time here in the next, at the end of the presentation or to this week's call, schedule 15 to 30 minutes. Let's review this with you. Again, if you're existing clients or even if you're not, we make this open for everybody, because most people don't realize this, but tax rates right now are the lowest they've been in over 40 years. But there isn't an economist, there's not a CPA that's out there that doesn't agree that tax rates have to go higher. And I think this is going to happen just as us boomers are getting towards retirement. And what it's going to do is it's going to leave just a fraction of what you thought you had ready for retirement. It's going to reduce that. And we got to make sure we take advantage of how to put you in a better situation, is what we call a tax retirement program. It's about understanding that wealth accumulation is important, but the tax planning that we bring into the financial picture, how do we bring our money back, putting together an income plan, this is just as important. It can't be just about the investment strategies. It's about how do I legally, morally, ethically reduce taxes. So conventional wisdom number one. Taxes will be lower for us in retirement. We have to rethink that. Let's start to put together a look forward plan on how we can reduce your taxes. Number two is this concept of the 4% rule. Again, we're talking here today about conventional wisdom, things that we've been told over the last 10, 20, 30 years that we've now had to rethink. Even in the last decade, we should have been rethinking these, but many of these things, because of the things that have been going on in the last 6 months, it's time to really get hyperactive about rethinking these and maybe looking at going away from that conventional wisdom that we've been told and starting to think about, the 2020 wisdom that we need to be using. What should we be doing? And the one is probably this 4% rule. I grabbed an article out of Forbes, and it says it's the $1 million question for those nearing retirement. How much can you spend each year without running out of money? And most commonly cited when they interviewed financial advisors on how to help families create this income plan is a 4% number. Now, where this comes from is from a 1994 paper that was published by a guy by the name of Bill Bengen, B-E-N-G-E-N, and it was published in the Journal of Financial Planning. Now, if you go back to 1994 with me for just a second, think about what things look like. Most of us were 30 years younger, so think about what CDs, what we were getting in the bank at that time. What were bonds paying us at that time? And the returns out of the market get into the, through the 80s and early 90s, even with the 87 correction, they used to always talk about the 10% rate of return over a 10-year period of time. Remember that one? Well, here's the thing. When financial advisors back in 1994 would counsel families on how much money they could take back, most commonly cited was a withdrawal rate of like 7%. Well, Bill Bengen, being a certified financial planner, said, hey, wait a second here. I don't think that taking out 7%, even if I'm expected to get 10% returns on my money, is a realistic rate of return. And part of the reason is because of the volatility of the market, how money comes back at us, right? If the market goes down, we have to take a higher percentage than this 4%. Anyways, Bill Bengen does a study. He goes back to 1926. He does 30-year rolling periods of time, 26 to 1955, 1927 to 1956. You get the idea, 30-year periods of time. And what he did is he found that the optimal Allocation of stocks to bonds was about a 60-40. You put 60% into stocks, 40% into bonds. I'm going to review that here in a little bit as well. But and he said that if we do that and we take out 4%, we adjust it for inflation, we had a 96% probability of still having money after 30 years. Here's where this this conventional thought here, this conventional wisdom that I'm talking about here in this week's Market Huddle, we need to rethink, falls apart. If I am taking out 4%, and I have an account where 40% of that money is getting low rates of return, very low interest rates, like we're seeing right now, where the 10-year Treasury is paying 0.5%, 0.5%. It was over 2% just in January, or about 2%, and well over 4% here prior to 2008. When I start looking at having 40% of my money getting very low rates of return, and I start taking out 4%, this piece of wisdom that we've been thinking about is the right way to take back money for sometimes, probably 20, 30 years, going back to 1994 anyways, that starts to fall apart. In fact, a guy by the name of Wade Pfau, PFAU, he's with the American College out of Pennsylvania, has rerun the numbers, making some assumptions based on where interest rates are today. And what he found is, using the exact, everything else being equal with what Bill Bengen had done back in 1994, he reruns them into 2020 numbers. We're looking at a 50% failure rate. 50%. It means that you've got a coin flick on whether or not your money's going to last if we're relying on 4%. In fact, he reruns the numbers. He says that probably a better rate of return is about 2.8%. Can do this. It really comes down to we have things like lower interest rates, we got greater volatility, we got sequence of returns risk. That again is when our accounts pull back. Think about somebody that was taking out 4% of their money into January, February, March, when all of a sudden the market came down by a third very rapidly, very quickly. They're still forced to take out that 4%, except now that 4% was probably more like 6.5 or 7. This is money that comes out of the account. It can't be replaced. It can't get back to where we are today because the money is pulled out. It comes down to what I talk about: mailbox income. How do I maximize things like Social Security? How do I maximize pensions? Tim, the new rate that Bill was quoted or stated by, his question is, he sounds like he lost some sound. What is the new percentage? The new rate by Wade Pfau is, after rerunning the numbers on this 4% rule that Bill Bengen had done, is closer to 2 to 2.5%. So 2.5% is probably a better number. The good news is this: there's a lot of strategies out there, maybe some you're not even aware of, that can actually get us a guaranteed rate of return much higher than even that 4%. So it's about incorporating mailbox income strategies. How do I maximize Social Security? How do I get more out of my pensions? And then looking at maybe other strategies to fill any voids, any gaps in this kind of planning that can be more assured than that 4% is oftentimes a better answer. Again, schedule some time, 15 to 30 minutes with somebody on the team here at Secure Retirement Financial, and let's review this for you. Tim, I know you were just in recently, but let's go ahead and re-talk about this if you'd like after the call. Everybody's going to get an option to schedule that. You can do it in person. You can do this visit virtually. We do a lot of Zoom meetings. All of a sudden, I'm sure everybody here has now learned what Zoom is. And we also can do it still face-to-face. Whatever works for you, and happy to make sure that we answer the questions that you have here about some of these conventional wisdoms that I think should be just completely thrown out the window, especially in today's environment. What we've seen here over the last 6 months, this 4% rule may be the number one that just I'm going to get off the soapbox here, but I just recently heard somebody talking on CNBC about the 4% withdrawal rate, and I'm thinking to myself, this is hogwash. It doesn't work in today's environment. So anyways, let's move on to the next conventional wisdom. And actually, I cheated a little bit. I put two together on this one. I hear, for the most part, two different strategies, and most of you have probably heard this as well. One strategy is when it comes to Social Security that both you and your spouse should wait as close to 70, maximize it. We've all been told about the 8% return we get for waiting on Social Security. The other extreme of this is take Social Security as soon as you can. You've probably heard that one too. Somebody says, hey, it's probably not going to be there for you. Get it while the getting's good. I can address both of these a little bit. The problem with the first one is that Social Security is embedded in our system. It's a part of the mailbox income. Social Security, for the most part, more than half of retirees plan on using Social Security as a substantial portion of their income planning. Now, I'm going to avoid the politics here, but I know that I'll just say it. So when it comes to this, if they were to eliminate Social Security, the only way to replace the Social Security would be to go towards more socialism. And I know that there's some things going on with that. I just don't think we're going to go to the point where Social Security would be eliminated, because it's not a self-funding tool like Social Security is. Social Security right now, I have money that's coming in. I pay into the Social Security Administration on my payroll. Remember when you got your first paycheck and you had FICA on there and you said, who's this FICA person who's taking some of my money on this paycheck? FICA, the money that goes into Social Security, that goes towards paying for the benefit itself. It goes to refilling that Social Security trust fund. Also, many retirees are surprised to find out that their Social Security benefits can be taxed. While many families don't have to pay tax on Social Security, most do, because they are ignoring the taxes on that. Again, that's something we can talk about with that first conventional wisdom, looking at taxes when we sit down with you. But the easiest way to fix Social Security so that it's always going to be there is to, number one, increase the amount of tax that families pay on that, increasing a bracket there. And number two is just hitting the employees, those that are working right now, increasing their payroll by a little bit. They say that if we increase payroll by 0.8% for both the employer and the employee, that actually Social Security is probably fairly solvent. And my guess is that we're going to see some of that. And of course, some of the other things they can do is take our kids and make them wait till they're 70 to take it, things like this. So I think Social Security is always going to be there. I think if you take it right away, unless you've got some specific health issues that you know that you're not going to be collecting for a long time for both you and your spouse, don't think of your own health only. You got to think about both spouses' health when you're taking Social Security. If you're taking it right away, you could be shooting your spouse right in the foot. On the other side of this, if I wait till 70, longevity gets in the way. If I wait till 70, if something were to happen to either spouse in that first 10 years between that 70 and 80th birthday, it's very hard for the Social Security, the increases in Social Security to make up for it. A better strategy, we typically look at trying to barbell it a little bit. It really depends on your situation. Let us run a Social Security analysis for you. Let us show how statistically, if I have one of you waiting a little bit longer, but the other one taking it a little bit sooner at full retirement age, or even as early as you retire, how that can really extend this out. Numerically, it's going to leave a little less Social Security if you both were to live to 100, but statistically, it really improves the amount of Social Security you're going to get because you're still collecting early, but yet you're still optimizing and the amount that's going to be left for surviving spouse and for longevity things and reducing of taxes that Social Security has for us. So we're talking here 5 different strategies that are these conventional wisdoms that we've been told over the years that we might want to rethink. A lot of these conventional wisdoms has changed over the last decade, but really even in the last 6 months, I think things have really changed very quickly here, and we need to rethink this. So what do you do about Social Security? Make sure you get a customized strategy that includes or considers taxes, Medicare premiums, spousal benefits, survivor benefits. Let us run that for you. It takes anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to have that conversation. And this is really important for those of you that have had an above average or even just an average income flow throughout your career. A lot of these traditional rules we're talking about, waiting until 70, taking it right, they don't apply to you. Waiting as long as possible could end up costing you actually a small fortune. So we want to make sure that we're looking at the net, the after tax, the full amount of Social Security benefits and what has to be spent to get to a larger benefit. We bring that into play and we do that, and then we statistically test it for you. If you'd like to review that as a client of ours, make sure don't hesitate to schedule some time. Let's get to the last one here. This 60-40 rule. I talked about this a little bit, and I thought about pushing this up towards that first one where we started talking about the actual, it was the second one, the 4% rule, because it does kind of rhyme with this. This goes back to this, part of this goes back to the old Bill Bangan study where he said we take 60% of your money and put it into equities, stocks, and 40% go into bonds. Well, we still are seeing that a lot. And the problem with the 60-40 diversification is, one, I've already addressed. That 40% that's in fixed income alone is just not getting us the rate of returns it used to going back 10, 15, 20 years ago. If you're putting 40% of your money into especially something like a mutual fund that's 100% weighted into bonds, you're, number one, very likely going to not be able to keep the same performance that these bonds have done, these bond funds have done over the last 10 to 15, 20 years. If you think about it, go back to 1980 when Ronald Reagan was coming into office. What's happened to interest rates? Those of you that bought a house in 1980 know that the interest rates were double digits. Now, I know families that are refinancing a 30-year mortgage and they're getting it for less than 3%. Less than 3% on a mortgage when we're back in the 1980s, we were paying double digits. Interest rates have come down over time. Fixed income has an inverse relationship to interest rates. When interest rates drop, the value of your bonds goes up. And mutual funds have been able to generate, take advantage of this for years. The problem is this, and I'm not trying to call the bottom of the bond market here. In fact, I think that bonds could even go a little lower short term here. But when I start looking out 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when I start looking out the rest of your retirement, what do I think is going to happen to interest rates? I think there's only one possible thing that can happen. They're generally going to have to start to gradually go back up. So what we've enjoyed since 1980s, as far as, which is like 40 years, what we've seen since the 80s until now, I think we're going to have to see that reverse. That means that the 40% of your money that's in bonds is going to have some headwinds. It's going to have some pressure. Did I just say to put 100% of your money into the stock market? No, I did not, because that ignores sequence of returns risk, taking your money back. You have to have money that's not exposed to market value adjustments. So looking for solid bond alternatives or solid fixed income alternatives is the action step here. This old rule of thumb, putting a 60%, 40% stocks to bonds, I believe it's outdated. I believe that what we've seen over the last 6 months has made this a critical potential problem for many families that are getting ready for retirement. And one of the reasons we do these market huddles is to make sure that we're bringing this to light for you. Another reason we do it is because we want to be here for you. If you have questions, if you, again, whether you're an existing client or maybe this is something that somebody forwarded on to you and you just wanted to take 15 to 30 minutes, you probably have a question or two from some of this, maybe even some of the planning we've done for you. It's going to bring up some questions for you. Please don't hesitate to take advantage of sitting down. Let's schedule a 15 to 30 minute conversation here and start to address any question you have. If it makes sense for us to visit with that, whether it's virtually or over the, in face or even just another phone call, we'll make sure that we're available for you. So I just put together the offer there. If you'd like to click on that, it automatically allows you to schedule something on the calendars. We'll make sure one of the team members here spends the time needed to address this for you. My goal with these 15 to 30 minute strategy calls is to always the same thing, to identify the number one thing you can be doing right now to make your retirement even better. With that said, I hope that there was some value in today's quick review. The 5 areas, 5 conventional thoughts that we've been told over the last 40 years that I think we need to rethink. It started with considering that taxes would be lower for us in retirement. Most families are finding out that that's probably not going to necessarily be the case. That money you put aside into retirement accounts could actually have to come out at a higher rate than when you put it in. Number two, making sure that we are not using a 4% withdrawal strategy. That 4% withdrawal strategy, that rule of thumb, I think it's flawed. I think it's probably the number one, these conventional wisdoms that I talked about today, the number one area that I think most or more retirees are exposing themselves to that I don't, and the reason why is because I think my industry still uses this a lot, but I can share with you some other math and such and some other research that says this could be very dangerous. 3 and 4, I cheated maybe because 5, they always say to have 5 things. So 3 and 4 was either taking Social Security too early, too long. The easiest step there, sit down with us. Let's make sure we put together a strategy for your Social Security that optimizes it so that you can get the most out of this. We've all paid money into it. It's ours to optimize. And then finally, looking at this old 60-40 rule and using that for diversification standard. I think that we need to rethink that specifically. We can't have 100% of our money exposed to the market because then we expose ourselves to other risks, market value adjustments early in retirement. But on the other hand, if I'm putting 40% of my money in fixed income right now, we probably have an interest rate risk that we need to be addressing in our retirement planning. So let us show you some other ways that you may not even be aware of that we can get even more out of your investment accounts. With that said, I'm going to wait just a second or two here. If you'd like to schedule that review with us, just click the bottom of the screen there where that is. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to chat that right now, and I'll see if I can address that in the next minute or two. Here's some ways that you can get a hold of us. The office phone number, that cell phone number is one that somebody in my office is always carrying around. Just shoot us an email. Anything that works for you, we're here for you. So with that said, another couple seconds. I don't see anything else, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Everybody have a great week. It looks like it's going to be a good one this summer or this week. It looks like a little bit of sunshine, hopefully a little less rain, but I guess that sometimes with the heat that we get the rain too. But either way, have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.